Man, when Tupac died, the world watched the hospital. But almost nobody knows what was waiting inside his home. Everyone remembers where they were when they heard the news. The headlines spread across television screens, radio stations interrupted their programming, and millions of fans refused to believe what they heard. Tupac Shakur, one of the most influential voices in hip-hop, was gone at 25 years old. The world immediately focused on the Las Vegas shooting, the hospital, the police investigation, and the endless theories that would follow up for decades. But while the cameras chased every update, another story was unfolding miles away, right? Behind the front door of Tupac's home, everything was exactly as he left it. No scene, no hidden bunker, no mysterious vault. None of that. Secrets, none of those. Instead, what people found was something far more emotional. It was the life of a young man who clearly believed he had more time. So imagine walking into a home of someone whose music had already changed the world. You might expect walls covered in awards, expensive artwork, or luxury beyond imagination. And while there were some signs of success, the first thing that stood out wasn't wealth, it was the work. It was a lot of notebooks, bro. Stacks of them. Legal pages, legal pads with pages folded over, loose sheets filled with handwritten lyrics, margins packed with ideas that had been crossed out and rewritten, pens sitting beside unfinished thoughts, as if their owner had just stepped out for a few minutes and returned to finish the sentence. First thing that shocked everybody around him, Tupac wasn't slowing down. He was creating faster than ever. For many artists, inspiration comes and goes, but for Pac, the friends who work with him often described someone who could walk into a studio, hear it beat one time, and begin writing immediately. Sometimes he would finish the songs in less than an hour. Other times he would just have a verse prepared before anyone else can. Looking around his home only confirmed that this wasn't an act for the cameras, bro. Writing was something he did all the time. Writing was who he was and what he was. Every notebook represented another conversation with himself musically. Some pages contained poetry, like that deep reverence type of thing. Other lyrics would just become songs. Some were nothing more than random ideas scribbled in the middle of the night before sleep erased them forever. The deeper people looked, the more people realized they weren't reading celebrity notes. They were reading the mind of a man trying to understand the world around him. Some passages explored pain, other questioned racism, poverty, politics, and betrayal. Then there was pages about hope, family, about being something greater than the circumstance. The contrast was almost impossible to ignore. That same person who could deliver aggressive verses filled with anger could also write gentle reflections about loneliness and purpose. That's the complexity of Tupac. And then there were the recordings. Long before streaming servers existed, Tupac stored ideas on cassette tapes and studio reels. After his death, it became obvious just how much material he had created. There were so many songs fans have never heard. Different takes, unfinished hooks, demos, sessions waiting to be mixed. The amount of music surprised almost everybody. It wasn't because everybody doubted his work ethic. It's because nobody realized how much he kept making music, bro. And for real, in many ways, his home resembled ideas of a mansion and more of a creative laboratory. Music wasn't separated from his daily life. Ideas lived everywhere. Real talk, one room contained lyrics, another room could contain movie concepts, another might hold books, scripts, notes about the future business opportunities. And see, look, that's another detail often overlooked when discussing Tupac. He wasn't only thinking about rap. He wanted to act, produce films. He wanted ownership over his work. He wanted to build something that would outlive him. Ironically, that never happened, but not in the way anyone expected, right? When people hear the phrase, what they found in Tupac's home, many imagine different types of things like police discovering hidden evidence and all this other stuff that changed music forever. It changed the history of things, man. So the truth is quieter and somehow even sadder because what they really found was proof that Tupac expected tomorrow to arrive, right? There were unfinished projects waiting to be completed, plans that would never be carried out, ideas that existed only on paper because the person meant to develop them never got the chance to. One notebook reportedly flowed from lyrics into poetry without warning. Another one was just going off like from like a rapper, and more like someone searching for peace. Reading those pages today feel like listening to someone thinking out loud. Maybe that's why fans remain fascinated decades later. It's not because they think Tupac died young. It's because everything he left behind suggested that he still has so much more to say. What was found was pens left uncapped, pages marked with arrows pointing to revisions, words circulated for emphasis, half-finished concepts abandoned in the middle of development, not to indicate someone was preparing for an ending. Everything indicated someone preparing for another beginning. Perhaps the biggest misconception about Tupac is the legacy exists only in the albums we can stream today. But in reality, his legacy also lives inside the ideas he never even had to finish. He never even got a chance to. For every classic song fans know by heart, there might have been a dozen of concepts still going on in the notebooks, but for his performance to public witness, there were private moments of creativity that almost nobody saw. His home became a snapshot of potential frozen in time. Walking through these rooms after his death must have felt so real. The clothes hanging in his closet weren't museum pieces. The notebooks weren't historical artifacts. Not just yet, it wasn't. The recordings weren't priceless collectibles yet at all. They were simply parts of an ordinary day interrupted by tragedy. Imagine opening up a notebook and finding tomorrow's plan written by someone who would never see tomorrow. Imagine hearing unfinished demos knowing that artists would never return to record like another verse or do like a chorus. Imagine seeing business ideas sketched onto paper that would never become reality ever again in life. That's what made the experience so emotional for people that's like real close to them. It wasn't the value of what they found. It was what those items represented. Our future. They future. And sometimes when you're trying to like further out the future, we all know futures are difficult. Very difficult to measure. Years later, many Tupac's handwritten poems would gain recognition for like fans who known for his public image, but they discovered his vulnerability where they expected anger, reflection where they expected rebellion, questions where they expected certainty. The private writer and the public icon were the same person, bro. He simply showed different sides depending on who was listening. Me, I'm a Gemini, so I know his side. I feel him. I understand exactly what he going through, what he was going through. Now, I didn't live in it, but as I got older, it seemed like I was playing the same thing he was playing. You know? Tragedy, right? It's tragedy, man. Others see nothing more than the artist documenting his thoughts. But perhaps the real lesson isn't hidden at all, man. Maybe the greatest discovery inside Tupac mind or in his home was the greatness often looked or overlooked while it's happening. You know, what was left behind wasn't a solved mystery or a hidden treasure. It was evidence of a relentless creator who spent much of his life writing, recording, and planning for the future. Handwritten lyrics, poems, and unreleased material show that Tupac was still making and creating an extraordinary pace of being a legend. While no one could know what he would have accomplished had he have lived longer, the work that he left behind continues to inspire millions around the world today. The work and the hours that he put into everything that he created inspires people to do the same thing. Nearly 3 decades later, his voice remains one of the most influential figures in hip-hop history. And his legacy lives through his words. He had the chance to share And the many ideas he never got to finish. We appreciate y'all for being in here. As the doors close behind those who enter his home one final time, the rooms feel silent, but somehow his words never did. And perhaps that's why we still listening. Nearly 3 decades later, we still listening and still learning. We're not measured by what we leave behind. We measure by who we become. Even if you're not here anymore, the unfinished conversations, the unfinished dreams it's just pages of unwritten material that you have yet to put on paper. Sometimes these don't even need to be words on a microphone or in the studio. Sometimes these things can just be so simple as you reading it and you feeling it, right? Think about a future filled with so many unfinished things. Just think about what Tupac could have become if he had simply been given more time. Maybe he would have became the president. Maybe he would have changed how things was. Maybe he would have stopped unjust and inequality. Maybe he would have changed the face of America. We do not know. These things remain unanswered, and they are debatable. I don't do conspiracy theories. A lot of y'all online do conspiracies. I don't do conspiracy theories. I just hit you with cold, hard facts. Right? This story became a story that was on TupacForum.net. I don't know if you guys remember this. Maybe too young. It's MachiavelliBoard.net too. I was on both of those, and the story jumped on there real fast when Russell Poole was around, and it was gone. I've never heard it. I've never heard the story again. Some kind of how I went to bed, and I don't know. Times went on. I remembered. It hit me in the face, and I'm like, dang, I remember this story was online. How about if I share the story myself? And I remember every part. It's weird to me that I still remember the story. That's where all these unreleased things come from. But a lot of it, people stole DAT tapes like that, which I understand. I would too. A lot of people stole a lot of songs from Death Row, The Vault. And that's why you got a lot of Tupac music, right? You still got some Tupac music right now that we ain't never heard from Johnny J, rest in peace. It's so many different people, even Shock G maybe, I'm pretty sure, many be in them. But one thing I know for sure, always gonna be a legend. Whether his soul was taken from us here in Las Vegas, Nevada, it lives forever. Machiavelli lives on.